today. So the theme of this talk is not to present to you any, the research literature or anything, or technicalities of the surgery, which is gasless, but we want to just share our experiences of solving one of the problem which we saw, and by using a frugal innovation and a collaborative approach. So that's the main theme of the talk. So let me share my presentation. Okay, I hope the presentation is visible.
Yes, Anurag.
Yes. So the gasless team is pretty big now. Involves many members of the TTS family also. Naming few, like right now today, I think we have 3 people already in the talk, and maybe Pete will join us later. So let me introduce you to. I'm Anurag. I'm a surgeon by profession. We have Pippa Bridges, who is a engineering designer, and she will be talking about it. And then we have Millie Marriott, who is a mechanical engineering research fellow at Leeds University. And we have Dr. Lavneesh Bains, who is associate professor of surgery at MAMC. We will also be joined, I think, by Prof. Peter Kalmer. He is a associate professor of mechanical engineering at Leeds University. So the team itself shows that it's a multidisciplinary team. Now, the context, we have a known fact that minimal access surgery is much better than open surgery. It has been proven again and again by several randomized trial and meta-analysis for most of the procedures, not for all, but for most of the procedures, it is proven. And it has been seen very across studies. But the question here comes that the main benefit of MAS is along early discharge, early recovery, return to normal activity, and these things. So the question we ask that who deserves these benefits? A well-to-do rich farm person whom you'll discharge on the first day, but he will take a leave and relax maybe at his home for next 7 days, or a daily wager who can use his extra days into earning for his wages and family. So the answer obviously comes that the underprivileged, they need more of MAS. But somehow the whole equation in society is flip-sided, that the people who are more privileged, they have an access to minimal access surgery, whereas people who actually need it, they don't have an access to minimal access. Be it poor people even in urban areas, and more so this problem we have seen is more in rural areas. So MAS is not readily available in far-flung areas or rural areas, and there are several reasons for that. The reasons can be from the health establishment point of view. The recurring expenses are too high to invest in minimal access surgery. You have to get ports every time. You have to get gas every time. It is general anesthesia is required for most of the surgeries because of the gas and the likely complications. So a very strict monitoring is required, and many times you don't have an anesthetist in the area. So all these problems lead to people choosing open surgery, because many times if you ask the patient that the option you have is get open surgery here or go to the nearby city for lap surgery, and people will generally refuse that. No, we have to take care of the field, we have to take care of the livestock we have, so we will not prefer going anywhere else. So whatever it is, it has to be done here. So they are forced to undergo open surgery, which takes so long healing time, more complication rates, and the cycle of economic aspects and economic burden of surgeries, they're trapped in that. So with these two facts, that MAS is better, but it is not available in rural areas. So there's just a small video, which will 2 minutes video, which will try to demonstrate what we are talking about.
Rural areas have limited resources and infrastructure for minimally invasive surgeries. The gasless laparoscopic surgeries in short, was developed to meet the needs of the patients in rural and remote areas. It makes laparoscopic surgeries possible under spinal anesthesia. There is a great potential to take this to the remote and rural areas to prevent higher morbidity and mortality that are associated with open surgeries. Azad Medical College at Delhi did a randomized control trial to see how this compared to the traditional laparoscopic surgeries. 100 patients were randomly allocated to undergo either gasless or traditional laparoscopic surgeries, and several parameters were studied. Results showed that gasless group had better intraoperative vital signs and marginally less operating time. There was no significant difference in the other parameters, although the pain score were marginally higher in the gasless group. Review literature agreed with better hemodynamic parameters and also had other advantages for minimally invasive treatment for low and middle income countries. The lower cost and isobaric system make this even more relevant during the pandemic.
So we started seeing that what is the problem, why can't it happen? So in conventional laparoscopy, we need something to look inside the abdomen or other body cavities. So we require vision equipments in form of telescope, light source, and monitor. We need to create a space to do the surgery. So we require, we use CO2 as a gas to create that cavity. And it generally is under high pressure. So if we study the complications associated with laparoscopy, they are either because of CO2 or because of high pressure, which we are using. And that is why we need general anesthesia and a strict monitoring system. In gasless, what happens, which is basically we are using a mechanical lift or a retractor kind of device to create this cavity. So this becomes the vision. We require the same equipment as in the conventional laparoscopy. For space, we are using this lift, so it becomes isobaric. So the pressure inside the abdomen and outside, it remains the same. So it's 1 atmospheric pressure. There is no CO2 use, so the most of the complications are kind of done away with. And it because we are not using CO2 or pressure, it can be done under spinal anesthesia. So that was a clear advantages, and this has been established by WHO also. It has given place to this device in its compendium of innovative devices which will define low resource country surgical services. So then we got to problem solving. The group kind of started forming back in 2016, thanks to RCCon and thanks to Dr. Roy getting us all there. And so we started talking about this theme, and we realized that basically if you have to solve it, you have to solve it in 3 main themes. One theme is we have to generate evidence that gasless open oblique, it is kind of similar to laparoscopy, the conventional laparoscopy surgery. We have to maybe redesign the existing lift devices and to make it lighter, cheaper, and more efficient. And we have to start training the rural surgeons in this technique. So we have to have a training modules. We have to create it and we have to test it whether it works. We have to do some studies on learning curve and other things. So these were the main 3 themes on which the group started working on. So the task for us, so almost all people are in all the groups, but people take leads in different teams. So the work I was doing was around the first theme where we have to generate the evidence. So we started a study at MAMC, and so the initial support was with Harvard Medical School, which sponsored the lift device to our center, and there was no other funding required. Approval was taken. So according to the context, the ideal comparison should have been with the open surgery. That is what is in the local areas, but because of the ethical angles, we compared it with laparoscopy, and we designed it as a non-inferiority study. We basically just wanted to show that it is as good as laparoscopic surgery. So it was a single-centered, non-blinded, randomized controlled trial where we had two groups, and the inclusion criteria were patient requiring elective laparoscopic general surgery for therapeutic or diagnostic purposes. We excluded patients who have an ASA score of more than 3, or obese patient or overweight patient of BMI more than 28, or patient who have multiple intra-abdominal condition, because the problem with the existing lift device is that it can, at a time, it can see only one sector, and if you rotate, then the whole assembly has to be shifted on the other sector of the abdomen. And if there is history of abdominal surgery, then also they were excluded. So using a computer-generated system and a sealed envelope allocation method, they were allocated into two groups, gasless and conventional. And the procedures which were performed under the study were cholecystectomy, appendix, and diagnostic laparoscopy. According to sample size calculation, we used operative time as a parameter, and this calculation was somewhere around 73. But we decided to include 100 cases to cover up for the loss of follow-up and other things. So methods were similar. In conventional, we use the conventional CO2, keeping the pressure at 100 to 12 mmHg. And in gasless, we used a Stan laparoscopic position device. Primary outcome were operating time. Second, other outcomes which we measured were intraoperative vital signs, mainly pulse rate, and we recorded the highest pulse which we recorded throughout the surgery as a sign of stress. Also, we recorded the EtCO2 and the blood pressure. Postoperative pain was recorded, and it was recorded for multiple sites. It was recorded for periumbilical pain, general abdomen pain, and also the shoulder pain. Surgeon satisfaction was something new which we decided, because we wanted to measure the difficulty of surgery or ease of doing this surgery. So surgeon satisfaction 30 minutes after the procedure was recorded on a scale of 1 to 5, and this gave some insights. So 133 total were assessed for eligibility, and total after excluding patients as per the criteria, we had 100 patients, and which were randomly allocated of 50 each into control and case group. There were, thankfully, there was no loss to follow up, and they were all analyzed. Demographic wise, there is both the groups were kind of matched. There was no difference in the parameters. So when we see the results, setup time and operating time was almost similar in both the groups. HR max and HR variation, which is the difference between maximum heart rate achieved and the minimum heart rate, was significantly better in the gasless group. So this was one finding which we found. Also, if you see the blood pressure and EtCO2, there was a significant, they were significantly better in gasless group, which we found. So this was one positive thing we found. In pain wise, if we saw that periumbilical pain or abdomen pain was more in gasless group, because the possible reason is because the incision size is slightly bigger than the conventional laparoscopy here. But the mean score and was, if you see in the graph here, the mean score was very less. The highest pain recorded was 3 or 3 point something was there. So in terms of analgesic requirement, there was no difference. There was rather no extra analgesic was required in any group. So there was no significant difference between the analgesic requirement. Shoulder pain, though it was a very mild pain, but it was slightly more in the conventional group as compared to the gasless group. Other things like wound infection, wound healing criteria, and hospital stay was similar in both the groups. Surgeon satisfaction score, we saw trend in this, and where if, as soon as the number of surgeries goes on increasing, was getting better on a kind of a linear way. So the learning curve was kind of significant. Thereafter, we noted that after around 5 to 10 surgeries, the score is mostly above 5. So you can see a clustering in this part of the graph. So we concluded that gastrous laparoscopy is a non-inferior alternative to conventional laparoscopy in terms of operative time and pain. The stand laparoscopic positioner, it offers a exposure which is comparable to traditional laparoscopic surgery and surgeon satisfaction. And gasless scores better in terms of intraoperative hemodynamic stability, and it is safe and can be easily mastered. So we advocate for its wider use, especially in low risk score settings, to extend the benefit of minimal access surgery over open surgery to selective population. And this will go a long way in achieving the goal of safe and affordable surgery for all. So yeah, so Siddharth, do we want to have questions here, or we do it together at the end?
We can, if there are any immediate questions from the group, we can take it right now, or we can club it together and do it towards the end. I throw it open to the group.
So this is So this is about the study which we did in MAMC. It has been published in Journal of American College of Surgeons, and the copy has been shared to I think you in the group. And feel free to ask right now or maybe later on. So. So Rohini says, thank you for the presentation. This is highly innovative and novel. I'm sure GILLS has. My question, how can this device be modified to operate on patients' BMI? Yeah. So Rohini, this is when we'll come to future work, this will come. So we are exploring on how to make this device better. And I'm sure the design team will answer that. We are also trying to, because one of the challenges or the people question about is the effect of the lift on the local skin and the abdominal wall. So we're trying to study how much pressure it is causing on the abdominal wall, and whether any histological or biochemical injury markers are there. So this is I think one study which we are planning in future. So maybe very soon we'll be able to answer that. I think we'll move ahead, and I'll invite Millie to make her presentation. So Millie and Pete together are heading the design team, and they are in process of redesigning and giving a totally new look to this device. Millie, over to you, please.
Hi everyone. So I'm gonna talk to you guys a little bit about my area of research, which is designing devices for global surgery. But obviously it's involved a big team of wonderful people, some of which are on this call now. So Pip is here, and I think Pete is here, and possibly also Dr. Ganaraj, as well as Labanish and Anurag, who just presented for you. So what we're going to cover is quickly what a global surgical device is, and then we're going to talk a bit about how we design them, and kind of use our project as a case study to show you the different stages. And then finally, we'll conclude with a bit about what we've learned and why you might be interested in participating in similar projects. So let's start with what most medical devices look like. So medical device companies are pretty universally making their money and designing their products for high-income countries. And unfortunately, a lot of these products aren't fit for use in low-resource settings. They come with really high price tags, and sometimes they don't even work because they're not designed to cope with extreme environments. Or they might need consumables which are difficult to get in remote areas. Sometimes they might break easily, because the training isn't designed for low resource settings, and specialist engineers tend to be far away if they want to fix it. So ultimately that can almost result in some of this equipment being unsafe. And like a good simple example is just this surgical light on the right here. And you might have guessed that it doesn't contain any battery backup. So if there's a power shortage, then the surgeon is not going to be able to see, which gets a bit dangerous. So that results in about at least 40% of donated medical equipment not being used. And that's a huge wastage. So global surgical devices are designed with low resource context as their target. So they consider the problems that I mentioned and they design solutions for them. And I chose an example designed in India to show you. And it's a simple app for viewing vital measurements, but it means that someone working in a rural center could consult with specialists located far away really easily. So innovations like this often end up being really popular in high resource settings and low resource settings because they're high quality and they cost very little. And hence that's why we use the term global. So there's kind of two core principles to designing global surgical devices. And one of those is frugal innovation. And what that means is substantially reducing the cost of a device, concentrating on its core functionalities and optimizing its performance level. So basically they do only what they need to do. They do it as well as is needed, and they do it at as low cost as possible for their users. So nothing more, nothing less, just right. But to get it just right, you need a really good knowledge of the setting that you're designing for. And that's where participatory design comes in. So participatory design means that stakeholders are part of at least some of the design activities, but ideally in all of them, which is sometimes called co-creation. And you can see us all co-creating in all of the images on this slide. So onto our project, which was designing a new frugal device to support gasless surgery in remote settings. So we started out with very little knowledge of the rural healthcare context or what was needed from the device. So how did participatory design help us here? So Pippa, our product design genius from PDM, went to meet the rural surgeons and asked them what they wanted and the limitations of the current devices they have, which you can see on the right. So they had lots of ideas. So they wanted it to be better to transport. They hoped we could create a device that could fit in a flash autoclave for them. So we learned a lot from that session. And they essentially set the requirements and aspirations for what we designed. So there was a lot we learned from that stage, respectively, and looking back, we definitely learned that you should always involve a wide array of stakeholders early on in the design process, not just users, because the device has to be right for everyone. And that means patients, surgeons, surgical assistants, maintenance staff, procurement teams, government officials, the list goes on and on. So in the next stage, we needed ideas. And we needed ideas that simply and kind of cleverly solve the needs of our users, but we still didn't know everything about the context. So how did participatory design help us here? So we shipped Anurag and all of his experience over to the UK and got him thinking. I'll add that it wasn't actually in a pub, but in his words, sometimes the best ideas come over beers. But on a serious note, when someone came up with an idea, he would know a lot better than us whether it would work or not. So we made a lot of progress in a small amount of time. And what did we learn? People that know the context, know what the best solutions are, and can even come up with the best ideas. So after that, we made some prototypes and we went back and forth with designs until we thought we were ready to show the users. So we went back to India and we let the stakeholders test them device themselves and tell us what they thought. So here's a quick video of that happening. So we learned a lot from this session as well. And the users were really critical about the device. They told us exactly what was right and exactly what was wrong. So that was okay because we got a lot of things right, but we knew that the device had to be just right. So we went on to make the device even better. And so now we kind of come to the stage that we're at now. And design translation means turning the prototype into a product ready for use. And there's lots of things involved in that. But we worked with some manufacturers in India, which was really useful because actually the manufacturers who are Exelo, based in Delhi, they already had some knowledge of rural contexts. And that meant that they knew they had to make something strong that was difficult to break and that users would need to be able to order spare parts, perhaps to remote locations. So they're really passionate about creating something the surgeons would love. And so what did we learn from this stage? Communication is harder via Zoom. We couldn't discuss things with the parts in our hands like we usually do and show the manufacturers the surgery, but we persevered and they ended up manufacturing a really beautiful device, which you can see on the right there. So what was the result of our participatory design? So together we created a device that has lots of improvements for stakeholders. It's easy to transport, and you can see on the left here, it arriving from India unharmed. And it's easy to store, sterilize, and maintain. It's lighter, it's compatible with all kinds of operating tables, and can be set up by 1 to 2 people. And it's less than half the price of the previous device. So we've still got a long way to go. There's still lots of things to do to make sure that we achieve all those requirements. We have a really fantastic global team to work with. So we have some confidence that we'll get further. And then I'll just quickly summarize what we've learned. But essentially we learned that collaboration is the key and that doing our best to serve the stakeholders' needs was a really positive experience. And the more inclusive the design process is, the more likely it is to have success. So there are lots of skills you can learn from participating in design projects like this. And whatever your knowledge is, it's likely to be pretty useful. So I'd like to finish by encouraging you to all do similar things and get involved in similar projects, because innovations can come from anywhere or anyone. And the best ones come from everyone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Millie. That was our team Millie and team for designing. Next, we'll invite Dr. Lavnish, who will be talking about the training protocols which we have been using and the proctorship program which we have been using. Dr. Lavnish, over to you. Dr. Lavnish, are you there?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, Anurag, I'm here. I'm just sharing my screen. Give me a moment. Is my screen there and visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay, well, very good evening, everyone. Myself, Dr. Lavnish, and Dr. Anurag has already given you the insight regarding the gasless laparoscopy, and Millie has already came up with the collaborative or participatory designs. I think these are very, very important keywords, collaboration and participatory designs. I don't have data, I don't have anything much to share, but I will be sharing plenty of photographs with my experience in the rural surgery training program. And I will be having only photographs, and last couple of slides may have something. So this, the rural surgery, we have heard of fortunately Dr. Ganraj is already here. So I've already heard of him a long time back about his gasless laparoscopic surgery. And it was in late of 2017 that Anurag popped a question to me, are you interested in visiting the laparoscopic surgery? I immediately said yes. And the area which we were to visit was Northeast India. And so we landed up in Dimapur. Dimapur is the only city in Nagaland with the airport and the rail connection. And we saw few surgeries there. And then we also went to the community health centers. One is this Jaluki in Nagaland, and later Bhalupong, which is at just at the border of Assam and Arunachal. And we were to also go to Shillong. Unfortunately, the weather played the spoil sport. So when we landed up in Dimapur, this was the first time that was my test with the so-called rural surgery. Although I've seen many other community centers and peripheral centers, but this was a new and totally unique experience. I've already worked in the plains, so this was a different terrain because it was a hilly area, perhaps some remote connections, and even the connectivity was the issue if you talk of technology in these regions. So this was, we landed up in Dimapur, and basically, I think Dr. Roy was already pointing on the last key. We should not be saying anything for the PHCs or other centers. So this was a small nursing home setup. Now you can see the OT. This is the entire OT. This is a bed here and all the equipment. And this was the stack. And this person was perhaps interested in laparoscopy. He arranged the stack and the things for us and Dr. Ganraj. And whenever Dr. Ganraj travels, I used to travel with 2 heavy suitcases. His assistant used to bring all these equipments from way back to Coimbatore. So he had some of the instruments here, and most of the instruments were brought. There were heavy instruments. You have seen the lift design. So it was just some kind of heavy instruments there. So this was the OT there. And okay, so heard of Dr. Ganraj. It was very nice and fortunate to meet him because we wanted to see what is there in gasless surgery, how it is being done. So here we were exposed to the so-called lift. And this is the first surgery when we assisted to Dr. Ganraj. And this was the first time that I witnessed about all this gasless laparoscopy. This was the first time the equipment was done. And the architects of this surgery were Dr. Ganraj and Dr. Anurag. Perhaps they did the first gasless cholecystectomy and a way to follow in Northeast. So they laid the foundation on that day. And our team and currently whatever the trainees have been trained, they are performing gasless surgery to immense satisfaction. So you can see, I think Anurag has already told, we get a good amount of space for the surgeries, provided we have patients of a suitable BMI. So after visiting all these Jaluki and peripheral centers, traveling all these areas, I got insight of many things. I got a real and first-hand account of the facilities there and the population problems. We talk of innovation, it's easy to sit in the urban centers and our EC rooms or big medical colleges. But when it comes to so-called innovation, Millie was absolutely right. It has to be participatory design. Unless the population there or the person who has to deliver the healthcare is involved, you won't be able to have a substantial gains. But some other problem is also happening in the rural areas. You know, medical training is the medical training is not up to that benchmark. Although there are rural training courses, but whenever you go and see, there is a quite disparity. You will not find plenty of specialists there. Most of the CHC are managed by medical officers, but they are pretty good. They're pretty good. They are doing cesareans, they are doing appendix, they are doing some of our surgeries, at least some basic emergency care they are being able to provide. These areas cannot take up bigger surgeries. The problem of a blood bank is there. Ultimately, what I realized, whatever we talk of sitting in the medical college and here and there, the problems in these areas are different. You require, you make policies, you make plenty of rural programs, but that they can be done. But when it comes to surgery, it is altogether something a different game. You need a surgeon, skilled surgeon, you need an anesthetist, you need perhaps more staff, you need OT, you need equipment, you need sterilization things, all these things are there most of the times, but you need supplies. Like in gasless, if the difficult areas, the provision of carbon dioxide gas, monitoring, the major problem was of anesthetist. So I realized there are plenty of issues and problems, and open surgery was the only resort, and most of the surgery was done under spinal only, not even GA. What can be the solutions? We talk of solutions, okay. Solutions can be okay. Whatever, it has to be patient and whosoever the participant is to be centered on that. Okay, improve your surgical training, improve the access to surgery. And with this gasless design, the only purpose is to shift for the some of the surgeries from open to gasless. And whatever you do or whatever you design, it has to be cost effective. So innovation continues, but any innovation has to be centered on patient safety. So as I discussed, the benefits of laparoscopic surgery, everyone is aware of. So the target study, it was planned for the Northeast, that is a training program in gas insufflation laparoscopic surgery for the rural surgeons of Northeast India. I would like to give all the credits to Mr. Noel. Noel is perhaps not on the call because of travel, but all this target study is his bona fide work with inputs from Global Health Research Group and the University of Leeds. So in this target training, the Global Health Research Group and the University of Leeds, they have another collaborators like we at MAMC, were the one, and Dr. Ganraj from the Corona University. And since Northeast was the area and people were having some time issues and traveling issues, so Kolkata Medical College was chosen for giving them the initial training because that is the nearest one to the Northeast. So advantage of laparoscopy, I think this slide sums up it all. I have not highlighted any major surgery. This is only for the management of appendicectomy. You see the surgical site infection are 4 times of the high income group countries. Laparoscopy, which is highly underutilized in our country, is only 8%. So middle and low is only 8%, which is 68% in higher group countries. Almost 8 times is the difference. So laparoscopy obviously is associated with fewer complications, early return to work, and definitely for a daily wage or a farmer, it is very much important. So this was a solution that at least you can shift some of the open surgeries, or maybe with the time and experience, many of the open surgeries to the gasless. So the tenets of the target was building networks. I think this was the first step here, that building of networks. So many medical institutes and the University of Leeds and the funding came from the Global Research Group. They all came together. Experience of Dr. Ganraj and the innovation from Dr. Ganraj came in very handy. Then the other says defining unmet surgical needs and health system assessment. That is, we assess that laparoscopy is underutilized and as said by Dr. Anurag, should be given to the needy. Then developing solutions. So this is a solution which was developed to shift from open to lab. So if you see, out of these 5 tenants, 3 were taken care of. They were already there. But the target training was for how we will be able to impart, to train the people in gasless and then review the impact of it. So the target training, okay, the Kolkata Medical College was chosen as the center for it. And it was not just some kind of ordinary training or some kind of a CMA activity with the domestic lectures. It has a full-fledged, nicely designed program with a valid structure. So there was, okay, these people were, there were 7 surgeons. 5 was already had done their MS and they were in early stage of their career. 2 were medical officers who were managing their CHCs, and from the various regions of Northeast India. So all these training programs, so it has intermediate stage and 1 and 2 and then final stage. So there was a proper theory and assessment. Then everyone was giving some kind of a device or a box so they can practice at their home or at their center. Even the laparoscopic instruments were given to them so they can practice, they can hone their laparoscopic skill, minimal access skills. And after that, they were again called up at Kolkata, where this gasless device assembly was done under supervision of the mentor or the trainer. And then the next plan was to give them a proper supervision in the proper surgeries. So this is the training which was happening, which happened at the Kolkata Medical College. You can see all the basic tenets of laparoscopic training, that is peg transfer, cutting of a circle, knot tying, and some kind of an instrument similar to this or equipment similar to this was provided so everybody can practice at their centers till the time we meet next. So this was again at the Kolkata Medical Center. This was the trainee and all the participants and the mentors. And here you can see one of the surgeon is busy assembling this gasless device, also done under supervision. They were relatively given a free hand, but under supervision. So this is a proctorship which is happening. And after that, once they were able to put in their device, lift the abdominal wall, the first thing they were asked to do a diagnostic laparoscopy. So at Kolkata Medical College, they only assisted and did a few of the diagnostic labs and assembly and disassembly of the instrument. Regarding the proctorship, which started here properly, now this was a unique kind of a proctorship. There's a proctorship or mentorship. The proctorship, the mentor had to go to their training facilities or to their working facilities to have a first-hand account what exactly is there and how it could be beneficial to.
Anish, sorry to interrupt, but please note of time. I think we'll have to.
Okay, I'm about to finish last couple of slides. So this was a proctorship. Okay, so all the mentors had to go to their facilities, and these were the. Myself is there, Dr. Mehti from Kolkata Medical College was there. So everybody got a hand there to do the surgeries. This was Dr. Mehti was interested in doing a CVD exploration. So, okay, that was done there. So this is the inside of CVD. Fortunately, they had a 5 mm scope. So we were able to show them just the inside of that. So this was a free camp, you can say, which was done at the Community Health Center in FEMA. So the program was there for 5 days, but I was only available for 3 days. In 3 days, we did around 23 surgeries. I don't have the count of the rest 2 days as I was not available. So 7 gasless colis, 4 gasless appendectomies, 3 gasless diagnostic lab. Almost all of these gasless surgeries were done all by the trainees under supervision. So the unique thing was everything was done at their centers, but under the supervision. So what I came to know, this is just a summary. So these regions have medical officers, few sales specialists, more of CHCs, less hospitals. Essentially open surgeries are being done. Lab is only limited to surgery. Even if the lab is being done in the cities or any other center, the transportation of the gas, equipment or the supplies is still a hurdle. Anesthesia, lack of anesthesia or anesthetics is a big problem. If I remember, with the anesthetic we got for a day, he had an 8-hour journey. He came in the morning and he had to go back. But what I found out all this training, that everybody had a good amount of, this zeal to learn. I will not touch upon all these things. This has been already covered by my previous speakers. So, but whenever you plan to design a system for a rural setting, take note of these things: safety, efficacy, cost effectiveness, and the people and the context there. So I would like to just summarize and finish up that capacity and need assessment are very important, but interdisciplinary collaborations involving the stakeholders and context specific to that area or that region, and empowering the local workforce, which we did there, will complete the story of innovation in global surgery or success of rural surgery. I think the second last slide. This is the GILLS registry. The data is all with the Noel. I will not like to, won't be able to share that. So this is the feedback, the group which we have found and we keep on getting. So they are able to gasless colis for acute cases now. This gentleman was very impressed, so he was able to do for his wife also the same surgery. And they keep on discussing with us, taking guidance for various other surgeries. Dr. Ganraj keeps on giving them insights in the urological cases. So this was all about my experiences with the gasless in the rural Northeast.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ramesh. So I think we are fortunate that we have Dr. Ganaraj, who is the basic person, who is the person who made this gaslet technique popular in India, and we all got introduced to this technique with him. So he is available for comments and answers. So we can take questions now. And Dr. Ganaraj, you want to say something at this point?
First, I'd like to thank all of you for listening to all this. When I started, I really hope that when I introduced the gasless to Dr. Anurag Mishra, I had the objective that it will really take off. And I'm extremely happy that they're able to do proper studies and also get international people involved in developing the thing. In the rural areas, in very remote areas, we have been able to do more than 1,000 gasless surgeries. And the people we are trained, mainly doctors working in rural areas, have already done about 300 surgeries. This is beside the work which is going on in MAMC and Calcutta Medical College and so on. With further research, I'm sure this will have a huge impact. And one thing I'd like to add is that with the COVID pandemic, probably it's safer to do a gasless than the traditional laparoscopic surgeries because it's an isobaric system. And we can continuously keep using suction. And it has many. Thanks for the opportunity and really extremely happy that the objectives that we had when we gave the lift to you to encourage you to start gasless in MAMC has been achieved now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Over to you, Dr. Anita.
Hi, Anurag. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ganaraj. Seeing you after a long time after the RC conference. So nice to meet everybody. Noel was also there for some time. So hello, Lavnish. Nice work. I just had a few comments. These are more about the paper that you shared. And there are a few comments are that you had mentioned in the rationale of the study that this is because of the unavailability of general anesthesia and another one was cost. But both, that was the rationale of the whole exercise. But both were not included in the outcome measures because even the cost was not analyzed. And secondly was even all the cases were done under general anesthesia. So I actually wanted to know how this scores over whether any surgeries were done under spinal anesthesia other than the paper, because paper doesn't have any non-anesthesia case, non-general anesthesia cases. So that was one of the things. Maybe I'll put a couple of comments, then I'll go on mute. So this was the difference that I found between the rationale and why the study was done. What are the advantages that you're saying of gasless over what was studied in the paper? Secondly, I didn't find any complications measured because conversion rate is, which was said. So that was second point. And third point, I wanted to know how much is the really uptake other than the Northeast, because Northeast is your study area. That's the area of focus. But how far it has got dispersed in the rural side, because in India, 60-70% of the people are rural, and even in our 60-70% of the things is in private practice. And the initial investment of laparoscopy, whether gasless or otherwise, is so much. So how many of the rural surgeons are able to afford that much investment whereas the recurring cost of the cylinder is about 700 rupees, in which you can do about 3 or 4 cases. In fact, in an experienced surgeon, the gas used is less, so even more. So the recurring cost part is taken care of, I agree. But have you just done a longitudinal study as to how far, how much cost was recovered of the investment in so many surgeries? Any such thing is available, I wanted to know, so that we could sell this, in a sense, you know, popularize this procedure in a much better way. So by giving cost analysis, cost of initial investment, cost per procedure, cost of initial investment, cost of recurrent expenditures, and there'll be much better take and acceptance of this from the rural surgeons, because both the RC conferences, I met most of the rural surgeons who were private practitioners. Very few were from the medical colleges. So when the medical college is putting investment, maybe it may work. But what about those smaller hospitals in rural? So other than the smaller comments, I think we are running out of time. So I won't take away all the 15 minutes that are remaining. But these are my two main basic issues, one with the paper and another with the uptake. Over.
Okay, so regarding the study, I think the reasons for not including cost and availability issues, which were the context setting, was mainly technical design setting, because it is not possible to measure everything in one study. So the purpose or the aim of this study at MAMC was just to prove that efficacy wise, it is almost as good as laparoscopic surgery, so that we can use this study for advocacy for other areas. I think that answers the second question, that whether it has made inroads into other places or not. Now we have such studies, and now we can very confidently say to people that this works and you should try it. So already we are getting invites, like we have got invite from AIMS Jodhpur, AIMS Patna, we got invite from JSS that they want to get introduced into gasless approach. So I think this is working, which is outside our project area also. About the second question, I Dr. Ganraj to answer, I think.
I'd like to add a few things about the first thing about the cost. In many of the places, probably the people who attended the conferences are from Maharashtra and in places like that, where I mean, it's fairly common, I mean, easy to get all this. Northeast and many of the places in Uttarakhand and where the cost of anesthesia is about 2 or 3 times the cost of the surgery that the patients pay. Because as Dr. Lovinesh briefly mentioned, the anesthesiologists have to come from where I mean, almost travel 8 to 10 hours to reach the place. And also the equipment and the gases and everything, transporting them to 500, 600 kilometers is a difficult thing. And in one other place where I used to operate in Arunachal, they had to walk for about 8 to 10 hours to reach the place. So getting gases, even though gas is cheap and nowadays equipment is less expensive, I mean, still there are many places in our country which still require gasless surgeries, and primarily whatever is possible under spinal anesthesia. And apart from Northeast, we have surgeons in South India who are doing gasless, and some in Uttarakhand and some in Jharkhand right now. So it's not confined only to Northeast.
Thanks, Anurag. Thank you, Dr. Ganraj.
Other questions, other comments?
Over from my side.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Anita. I throw the floor open to the other participants for any comments that they have or questions that they have. Okay, anybody would want to raise their hands or type in the questions? Yes, Deepa was asking the question, which I think Dr. Anita also asked. Were there any complications related to the gasless surgery with the space that it creates in the abdomen? Are there complications related to that? Over.
Yes, so I think it is mentioned in the paper also and the presentation also. There were complications on both the limbs, both the arms, and there was hardly any difference. The main complications were around the wound infection in the umbilical scar. There were 3 cases which were reported as a grade 1 surgical site infection, which was there in both the limbs. So there was no significant difference between any complications. There was no other complication which was worthwhile mentioned. And so this was it. The main concern when I also looked at the lift device was the first thing came to me that there will be more necrosis at the site of the ring there, or pain would be there. So, but there was nothing like that. So yeah. There is a Priyansh also writing. What kind of maintenance do we look at when we consider gasless technology compared to usual? So maintenance wise, not much. I think the whole assembly can be disassembled into parts, and they can be then cleaned and put to autoclave. So that's a typical maintenance. It's a proper steel equipment, so not as fragile as the usual laparoscopic things. So pretty easily can be maintained. And the new device which we are designing, it is further, it is rather even better the way as far as the maintenance is concerned. Okay, a question from Deepa is: any difference in males and females, as male have a more muscular framework, so it is more difficult for the lift? So yes, so we had equal kind of distribution of male and females, and we did not find any problems and with males either. But yes, females have a more compliant abdominal wall. It is much easier with a very slight elevation of the lift device. We are able to create a cavity. But the difficulty-wise, there's no difference we found. Dr. Ganraj, your experience with working with males, especially within the hilly areas where they're more muscular and everything.
See, in women it's easier because they have a lax abdomen, especially if they delivered babies. Men, it's a little more difficult, and so that is the only time when you had this whole system slipping down if they come out of anesthesia. And most of the time, another drawback is that most of the time we operate with the spinal. So if the surgery takes a slightly longer time, when they come out of anesthesia, they tend to keep moving and causing problem. Only one serious complication I had in the first 1,000 cases was injury to bowel, which is inadvertent, and we had to recognize, do a laparotomy a few days later. Otherwise, about 2% we had to open to tackle the complication, which is not uncommon because many other rural surgeons are learning these techniques.
Okay, at this point, maybe I will like to invite Pete in. I can't see any questions. So Pete, anything you want to say? We have got 5 minutes left.
Hi there, Anurag. Good to see
I can see a Diwali background behind you.
Yes, it's a little bit late, I suppose. Sorry, but yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize, I think the presentations on the project kind of already showcase that it's a really multidisciplinary piece of work, and it's absolutely kind of led by the clinical need. From our point of view as engineers and designers, we really value and need that kind of input from clinical and healthcare professionals, and really the whole team that are involved in delivering these kind of gasless procedures. So during the times that we've come across and spent time with various members of the team, and yourselves and Dr. Ganaraj and his team, we've learned a huge amount from just observing, being in the right settings, seeing how equipment is used and how procedures take place. And that's really fundamental to what we do before we go about designing anything. So we've tried to, as Millie said, build that participatory design into the whole process of what we do. And I think one thing we'd like to emphasize to anybody who's in the kind of the healthcare area is to seek out other engineering and design professionals if you have ideas, if you want to work on projects, because that's the only way that we can kind of further develop these ideas. So yeah, I think if there's sort of schemes that you can get involved in and you'd like to pursue those, we would really kind of, we welcome anybody's inquiries, but also we'd kind of encourage you to do so. I don't know if there's not any questions as such, Anurag, but yeah, I just wanted to say that. I think we've been privileged at Leeds to have like a close relationship between teaching hospitals and universities. I know you have a similar setup at MAMC, but I think that's kind of increasingly true around India and around the country. So these opportunities hopefully will grow.
Yeah, we hope so. Siddharth and Dr. Anita, anything else?
No, I think that's it. So once again, thank you, Anurag, and your whole multidisciplinary team, and thank you, Dr. Nyanraj, for joining us. It was a very, very insightful presentation on the entire process, from idea generation to implementation and research on how you can use frugal innovations to deal with the challenges of providing care in rural India and other low resource settings. So thank you so much, Dr. Anurag. So a big round of applause to the entire team. Thank you so much for joining. Okay, so with that, we conclude our session for today. We went through two different modes of addressing the challenges in the healthcare system. One was triaging, which has its own challenges, and of course, something like frugal innovation and how it can improve outcomes and make services more affordable and available to a large section of people. With that, I hand it over to Dr. Anita to pass on the message for the next session. So once again, thank you everybody for joining us and taking the time out for the trauma session. Hope that you all weren't too traumatized, but if you are, of course, there is the TTS system to get back at. Yes, Dr. Anita, up to you.
Thank you, Sid, for coordinating it so effortlessly. And thank you all our guests for joining in. It was very interesting to listen to the new concept. And next topic, next Thursday is a session by Rakhi on gender-based violence, domestic violence and its legal implications, to be specific. And after that is a health economic session led by Monty and his team. Thank you and good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Have a good weekend and stay safe.
Bye-bye.